Welcome once again to Cinemaholics, the Major Motion podcast, where we talk about the biggest and the best films coming to theaters and streaming online from San Francisco. I'm John Negroni, film editor for In Between Giraffes, and from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he's a news and entertainment writer at Collider. It's Will Ashton.
What up?
Whoa, are you okay, Will? You seem a little melancholy. You seem a little bit like something went down this past week that's got you down.
What's got me down, John?
I don't know. Like, you have this look on your face that's like, it is finished. Like, you've just completed something years in the making.
I see. Yeah. So, to answer the lead up that you were setting up here, I just released, or rather, we just released the final episode of The Ogre, Goth's Ogre, my sister podcast, Cinemaholics, I guess.
I think it was like a cousin podcast,
like, distant cousin, I guess, or
because like we play together, at each other's house every once in a while, and
yeah, but you don't keep in close contact.
We fight over our toys, and
you don't even listen to full episodes. You just kind of graze in and out of the podcast.
That's what real family does.
Yeah,
yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, we started it around the same time. Actually, I think In Ogre Toad's Ogre started just a month before we started Cinemaholics. So it's weird to think about, we kind of started these two podcasts at the same time. I kind of connect them in my brain for that reason.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I mean, we did it for 6 seasons. I kind of knew we were getting near the end, but I kind of wanted to make sure it wasn't, I knew on good terms. Like, I didn't want this podcast to feel incomplete. But I also wanted to end it while still enjoying doing the show, having fun, having good chemistry with my friends and co-hosts Matt Serafini and Chris Sheridan. So, yeah, we finished up season 6, which is all about Trek 2, and then we just released a 2.5-hour episode called simply It's Ogre, and it's us discussing all 6 films, saying our final piece on each one, and then ending it with a special little bonus, which I don't know if you have listened. Yeah, I know you started to listen to the episode, John, but I don't know if you've listened to the whole thing yet. I imagine
you have like 20 minutes left or something like that.
Okay, so what do you think so far?
It's different from what I expect. I don't know what I expected.
Okay,
actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah,
but it's melancholic. But it feels like a celebration.
Sure.
I got a little bit more, like, I think I'm at the part where you're talking about Garfield.
Okay.
And you kind of did your obligatory Masters of Disguise, kind of conversation there a little bit. And, it's fun. It's just, it's just a little sad. I'm a little bummed out.
Yeah, I understand. I mean,
on your behalf.
The archive is still there. I mean, if people want to go back and listen to them, you can hear me age. Because we never missed an episode. That's the kind of wild thing about the show, is that we produced 1 episode a month, from, what was that, January 2017 to now January 2023. So if you want to hear me age in real time, there you go.
Yeah, you get month to month, as opposed to Cinemaholics, where we put out something around like 500, clips, over 300 weekly episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely...
You can really hear yourself age on the show in some ways.
Man, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's it. It's on the podcast feeds. If you listened to the show, enjoyed it, thank you so much for supporting it all these years. I really had a lot of fun doing it. It's been, a little side project, something I had a lot of fun doing, and I'm really proud of the show, and I'm sad that's over, but I'm also kind of happy to end it on a good term. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'll be sadder later on. Like, I feel like in a month or two, it's going to be weird in February when I'm like, I got to produce.
You'll be looking at like a DVD of Spy Kids and just be like, I wonder if what would happen if I watched that 12 times. No, Will, snap out of it. It's over.
I mean, there have been some, films that I'll like think about. And I'm like, yeah, that would be really fun to do for an Ogre season. Oh, yeah. That's right. So I feel like it'll hit me more in the months to follow, I guess. But that time hasn't come yet. So for now, I'm just kind of, I'm a little relieved that whole thing is done, because these last two episodes are fairly intensive as far as the preparation process.
They're long. They're big.
They're long. Yeah, because the previous one, the season 6 finale, was our musical episode. So that also was a very strenuous kind of episode to put together. And so I'm kind of just relieved that I can take a break and, just let it be.
And just focus on your 2 other podcasts, right?
Yeah, seriously, yeah.
I just looked it up, and It Ain't Ogre and Cinemaholics are 2 weeks apart, almost exactly. Because the first episode of Ogre came out January 28th, 2017. And the first episode of Cinemaholics, which was the Lego Batman movie, and John Wick Chapter 2. We're about to get Chapter 4. That was February 12th, 2017. So that's how that all shook out. We really just kind of... Because I remember when I came to you about doing a movie review podcast, it was before we landed on Cinemaholics. You were kind of like, well, hey, I got this other secret project going on. It was like a podcast type drug deal. You were trying to like get me to be aware of,
I didn't want to spill the beans too early because that would be fun to kind of reveal it gradually. And who knows, maybe I'll do that in the future. But I don't know.
Well, you'll never guess what. Yeah. Or no, you'll be like, John, you'll never guess what podcast I got up my sleeve this time. I just make podcasts and then I don't even tell you about them. Right. And you're just like, oh.
Yeah.
Now you're doing a One Piece podcast? Okay.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I do kind of feel a little wistful thinking about like how novel that was for me. Like, oh, I'm doing a podcast. I'm getting in the podcast game. And then there was that one.
Well, you had done a podcast before that.
True. I'm not going to talk about that
Post-prop.
one. No, yeah, you don't need to bring that one up. But in any case, yeah.
All right. Well, we've got a fun program for you all this week. We are going to be going through some feedback and a couple of episodes of the show, or I guess we're going to do some feedback on last week's episode. We're going to talk about a movie that a listener requested that we missed over award season, and we'll do a little bit of like what we were up to on Sundance or during Sundance 2023, and finish things out with a review of Infinity Pool. This is going to be more like an original episode of Cinemaholics, like back in the day, like back when we used to do like a lot of different stuff, not just like one review and we're done.
Yeah,
like maybe one off topic in the beginning.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is this our season finale, by the way?
Mm-hmm.
It is, okay.
Yeah, so after this, we're going to be jumping into season 7 of Cinemaholics, our 7th year of doing the show. Who knows, like if we'll go to heaven after 7. Sure. But I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, because when you mentioned those dates, I was like, oh yeah, that's coming up.
Yeah. But yeah, so we have some feedback here, a couple things. So the first thing is that we had some feedback on our Women Talking episode. If some of you recall, I'm sure everybody listened to our Women Talking review, right? I actually don't know. I haven't seen how well that episode did. I think it did all right. But we talked about Women Talking in the Oscar nominations, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, what were the 2 lines I gave you? Because I gave you one if it was a success and one if it flopped.
Oh, yeah. Women be talking, men be flopping? Was it?
Yeah, that was if it flopped. But I also said, it was women talking, more like people downloading if it was a success. Yeah.
I think it's just doing like average. Like, so what's your medium? What's your middle? You'll have to maybe think about that one.
Yeah, I didn't think about that one. I didn't prepare.
Which was it was the likeliest scenario.
Yeah, I know.
Well, all right. So, no, we got some feedback from a listener. I think it was mostly directed toward me. What happened, Will? You received the feedback, right?
Oh, sure, yeah. So my friend Jess, hey Jess, if you're listening, she came to see Women Talking with me, and we talked about the film for a little bit afterwards, and also she listened to our episode. She was very nice to listen to our episode, and she had some thoughts, which I sent over to you. I mean, I would like to think that there are, complaints and criticisms directed at both of us, because we both reviewed the film, but you take them, I guess, a little bit more personally than I do.
Wait, what? What? I didn't. What? How am I taking it personally? What?
I don't know. You've been worried, I guess. I don't know.
Worried?
What's up?
What do you mean?
I don't know. I mean, it just seems like you're less enthused to hear criticisms.
Oh, I mean, nobody likes to hear criticisms, but I like that people are listening and engaging. That's always fun.
Sure.
That's not an issue with me, that's for sure. I was, if anything, I was a little confused because apparently I have to re-listen to it, and I feel like I maybe like communicated an issue I had with the film poorly, because it seems like she got the impression that I was complaining about the movie being whitewashed, which I think I'm trying to remember, and I think I mentioned because like the movie was sort of loosely based on something that happened in Bolivia, and so I thought it was kind of weird, like the way that they handled it as like an American adaptation. And I think I was trying to say that like I just didn't feel like the movie had a good sense of place. And I didn't really understand the like how authentic it was trying to be. And maybe it came off like I was saying, it was like, these are all white people. What the heck? And that's definitely not how I felt. Because, you know, I think that I feel like the context of the movie, all of them being white, makes perfect sense considering it's like the Mennonite thing. And also, like, as the listener pointed out, that apparently Mennonites would be German imported, which I'm not sure about that. I'll take a word for it. But because I remember I grew up in Virginia, and I remember there were like Mennonite communities, not Mennonite colonies, but I've met people from those communities, and like I'm pretty aware of like how they look, how they dress, how they talk, and everything, and not to impugn the movie for how they portray it, because I think the movie has its own little world that it's trying to get across. I had no issues with that at all. I guess it was just like there was something about the movie's commitment to itself geographically that I just wanted a little bit more to grasp onto, but it wasn't like a major hurdle for me with the film. Like if the rest of the film worked for me better in terms of like the story and kind of how it works and everything, I wouldn't have cared that much, honestly. It was just something I was bringing up that I noticed. So hopefully that belies any sort of like, hopefully I didn't come off as like a total reactionary weirdo, but I probably did.
I don't know. I mean, just wanted to make sure we preface that with Miriam Toews, or what's how you pronounce her last name?
The author of the novel, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Miriam Toews, yeah.
Toews? No, it's not Toews. It's
the director? Do I have it mixed up?
No. The author. I'm making sure I'm pronouncing her name correctly.
Yeah, Toews.
Toews? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she grew up in a Mennonite community, and the Manitoba community would have been primarily, like you said, German imported. So I don't know. I guess
it's probably one of those things, right, where it's like, the Mennonites I've come across have been totally different, and just something I'm not aware of, and it is sort of, it's one of those things where this is where I run into the trap of like, when I don't watch trailers and I don't look into movies as much before I see them, sometimes I don't have all that context and I just see things out of context. And depending on the movie, like if I really like the movie, then I'm going to look into it. I'm going to want to like listen to interviews and really find out these details, which I always should, because we do this show, you know what I mean? But sometimes I don't, when I think in this case, I didn't think we were going to be covering women talking at a certain point. So I kind of, we went into our review without me doing a little bit, sometimes I usually do like a little bit of research so I know what I'm, getting into, and the listeners have something to listen to. But that didn't happen this time, and clearly it showed. Yeah,
I mean, sometimes we mess up. I think it's fine. I just think when it was worth mentioning, when we misspoke or, didn't really give the film a completely fair and accurate shake. Also, I mean, we were kind of criticizing the film. If you want to, go to, something we both did, we were criticizing the kind of formal speech of the film, or at least the kind of scholarly talk of it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's worth noting that, they primarily spoke in an old form of the language in the dialect called Plattdeutsch. So, I mean, I don't know how that would translate exactly to English, but there's reason to believe that, it would have been more accurate than not, especially given the author's connection to the Mennonite community. So I just,
I'll continue my caveat from before, because I said it last week too, that we were willing to talk about the movie and give our fair shakes, but like, it's just one of those movies where people should look into other reviews from people who know more about the material, female critics in particular. I think that, I was happy we got to have our conversation because we did both see the movie, and I'm sure some people are interested in what we have to say, but obviously we are not the end all be all by any stretch.
That is most certainly true.
All right, that's enough men talking about women talking. How about some men talking about bones and all? Because we got some feedback from a listener. Hello, Chantel, who emailed us in. And if you'd like to email us, you can do it at any time. Our email's in the show notes. It's cinemaholics@gmail.com. And Chantal was curious why we didn't cover Bones and All. And I think they also weren't sure if we even like mentioned it on the show. I know we mentioned it. I know there were times throughout November and December where you and I were like, oh yeah, Bones and All, that's in limited. Oh, now it's like hitting some more theaters. Oh, it's getting, and we always had it on like this, like in the ether of like, oh yeah, we're going to do a Bones and All episode. We actually considered doing a bonus show of it with a friend of the show who could have come on and who I think was more negative on the movie, which would have been interesting. But it just never kind of worked out because it's the blitz of award season. It was the same thing with like Women Talking. It's like there's so many movies that come out around this time. And I don't think we were used to or ready for it because this past award season was so loaded compared to 2020 and 2021. It was more like the years before that. And I think we were more prepared in the years prior. Like we kind of knew that it was going to be a lot. And so we used to do like 5 reviews per episode to kind of deal with that. And in this case, we missed it. So thinking of talking about it now.
I mean, because I know that was like Thanksgiving week, right? That's when it came out in November.
Mm-hmm. I remember because it was coming around like Glass Onion, and Glass Onion obviously like kind of overshadowed it along with like Fablemans. And I think that's probably one of the contexts we talked about it in was like the box office of award season movies. And it was like, well, yeah, it's a cannibal movie coming out on Thanksgiving. What did you? Come on. Sorry, I shouldn't diminish it to a cannibal movie, but that's the poster,
Yeah, but in any case, I mean, I know you saw it a screener, I think, like around that time. I saw it in like mid-December. I was going to see it earlier, but I got the novel coronavirus, so I had to wait. But yeah, I mean, I like the film. I don't actually remember how you felt about it, to be honest.
I liked it okay. I watched it, and I loved the Americana of it. Like, I loved the way that it was using... It's sort of, and for people who don't know, it's sort of a love story within the context of people who find out that they have this insatiable urge to consume human flesh, and it's not treated as like it's not Warm Bodies, where you're trying to satirize it or try to have fun with that high concept. Instead, it's like a very grounded take of like, what if these people were really out there, and it's such a heightened sense of identity that these people can literally like sniff each other out in the real world and like, oh, you're a cannibal like I am. And it's sort of about how those people form sort of found friendships and communities, but also how they come into conflict with one another. And it's from Luca Guadagnino,
of course,
one of the current cinematic masters, I think, right now. And
you say that, but I feel like you've been more critical of his work than me. But I know that you liked most of his films that he has done, I think, with the exception of the Suspiria remake. I think that's true. Correct,
but I've always respected his movies a lot. Like I point him out as somebody who I do think he is a master of the craft. It's just that, I can't fully engage with all of his movies, with the exception of Call Me by Your Name, which I think is his like that right now. That's his like magnum opus. I just think that movie is near perfection for what it is. And I think that this movie is like kind of following in its footsteps a bit of being like this unabashedly romantic movie set within, I was about to say that the way that it's using this sort of seemingly like disgusting thing, right? And not seemingly disgusting. It is disgusting, but he's using it to sort of like show like people put on the outskirts of society. You can put in all kinds of like hot button social issues into this. Many people, of course, will put in like LGBTQ plus queer identity into like what these characters go through, but there's plenty of other things, and anybody who feels like they're, on the outskirts or they feel like they're on the edge, and how that can sort of be fused through a narrative via Americana. That's where I think this movie finds its stride. My issue with the movie ultimately is just that it's not that surprising of a movie as it goes. Like I enjoy it scene to scene, but I just didn't find all the scenes as like equally compelling. Like it's not a movie that I think flows super well, even though I really liked everything that I was seeing. And I liked all the performances. I mean, particularly, the two leads, I mean, Taylor Russell and Timothy Chalamet, who I haven't been as up on lately. Like I think with like things like Dune, I don't know. I just feel like the guy, I like the guy. I think that he's a promising young actor, but I haven't been like really wowed by him in a while. But Taylor Russell, who I think is just like, she's a rising star in so many ways. And I think she's becoming one of our like indie darlings in terms of just everything she's in. I think she's elevating everything she's in. I mean, she turned the escape room movies from like January trash into like something that really brought people out, because I think she's such an engaging performer. And this is a great performance to kind of add to her repertoire, since movies like Waves, for example, which I think she kind of makes that movie. I mean, this is a good movie. It's one that it just didn't hit me super hard. So it's, it's not far away. Like it didn't come up on our best of the year. It's not one of my honorable mentions, but I definitely point at it as like, it's a hard movie to recommend, but it's kind of like the characters themselves. It's like, I can sort of sniff out the kind of people I know who would actually really like it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the log line for it would be like Badlands by way of Raw, I guess. Sure. It was, maybe not Raw as much as, I don't know. You get the gist. It definitely is honing to that sort of Malick-esque, naturalism, something that I feel that Guadagnino has, like you said, he's kind of pushing back against the sort of heightened surrealism that was in Suspiria, kind of going back to something a little bit more, grounded and rustic and, melancholic, like Call Me By Your Name. I'll bet, less swooning and, a little bit, if it's still romantic, it's not as like, it's a little bit more grounded, I guess, in the sense that like there is a bittersweet quality to it, like the sense of doomed love, in the same way that I guess, I don't know. I'm kind of speaking in circles here, only because I guess Call Me By Your Name is also a doomed sort of love in a different sort of way. But in any case, bones and all, I agree with you about Timothée Chalamet. In fact, I feel like he's been on a good run of late. I know he hasn't been always hitting them out of the park. Rainy Day in New York, for instance, wasn't a great film, and he wasn't very good in it. But I mean, I thought he was like one of the best parts of Don't Look Up, a film I'm not especially fond of.
I honestly forgot he was in that. That was
really?
And I guess that was his last movie, huh?
I remember him being in the movie mainly because that was the point where I like kind of like, sat up a little bit because it got fun again. I was like, oh, like he's actually like a pretty good comedic actor. I'm excited, and it was a solid performance. A film I didn't particularly love.
I would say that for French Dispatch. That was the last movie he was in.
Yeah, he was good in that. Yeah, I mean, I felt like that was probably the weakest segment in the film, but I still enjoyed it a lot. But yeah, I mean, I think he's been on a good roll of late, really proving himself, and I thought this performance was exceptionally good. From him. I really enjoy, like, there's a scene, like, kind of a emotional climax of the film with them having, like, a kind of picnic, in the out on the road and like, kind of like, I think it's like a beachside kind of thing. And it's a really emotionally raw, tender moment. And his performance and Taylor Russell's performance in that scene is really great. And I was thinking about that scene a lot when I was putting together my honorable mentions, and like I think there are several moments in this film that really live up to some of the best Luca Guadagnino scenes. I guess for me, what I kind of took issue with was that I haven't read the source material. I feel like I keep saying that week by week, so I got to read more. Yeah, but I will say that
it's based in the 80s, so it's kind of it does have a little bit of like a period to it.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is that I know it's a young adult novel. And I feel like it kind of falls into some of those kind of contrivances and expectations, as you're kind of alluding to, in a way that I felt was kind of butting against the naturalism that Luca Guadagnino was bringing to the style. So it felt like those story beats were a little bit more apparent to me because they didn't feel as natural to the style and the story. And I guess for me, that made the story not flow as well as his previous films. And then I don't know where you exactly landed on the Mark Rylance performance. I was curious to talk to you about that.
I liked it at first, and then there's something that happens with the performance later on where it just becomes a little bit cartoonish. And I'm glad you mentioned the YA thing. It does sort of start to feel a bit like he's a stock YA character, but it's in conflict with really the movie's like deeper commentary. So it just, I don't know, it ultimately lands as something it's kind of lopsided in a weird way. So
yeah, I mean, I guess
it's not his fault. I think he's fine in it and everything, but
if it was isolated, that performance, I mean, if it was isolated to that one scene in the house early in the film, I think I would have been like, oh, that's a really cool, interesting character. And then they kind of bring him back in a forced way, and then he gets increasingly, as you said, goofier throughout the film to the point where, like I said, it continues to kind of butt against the naturalistic tone that it was striving for throughout. Though I will say, since I've seen the film, I've been kind of quietly muttering to myself, "Nothing's ever Dolly with Sully."
That's why you've been.
Yeah, nothing's ever Dolly with Sully.
The only other thing I would say is the score is one of the best things about it. This is Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross.
Yeah,
and
it's a good score.
The movie got totally snubbed. No mention at all for Academy Awards, but I would absolutely put the score with it put in like consideration. But yeah, I mean, it's a movie that kind of came and sort of went. It's not something that I think it's a movie that a lot of people kind of forgot about because it didn't have a big splash. It got buzz when it was doing its festival thing. It was at Venice, and I think that people sort of expected a little bit more from the movie because of Guadagnino and because of Chalamet and Russell, but yeah, it just didn't quite get there. But
yeah,
still a good movie if you can see it.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I guess my honorable mentions kind of cap at somewhere around like my top 30 or 35 films of the year, but I'd say it's probably in like my top 40. Like I did enjoy it a good bit, and it was very close to getting into my honorable mentions. It just didn't quite make the cut, but I did enjoy the film. I liked it. I guess we should have given it more due.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It kind of got lost in the shuffle. I'm double checking where I had it in my ranking. Yeah, I mean, I had it a bit further down. I mean, I had it at 69. That's pretty nice, but nice. Yeah, I had it. It's like around movies like Sea Beast and Emily the Criminal and Scream, like movies I genuinely enjoyed and I thought were worth watching. So it's not that bad or anything, but it's a good year for movies by my estimation.
Sure. So the Sea Beast is good.
Yeah, I like Sea Beast. It's a good little animated movie. There's my mini review.
I was gonna say we never talked about that one. I'm trying to catch up on these Oscar movies. That's one I still need to see. I might do that one this week.
Oh, yeah, it's worth checking out. It's on Netflix and it's easy to find. Bones and All, I think, was on premium video on demand for a while. Probably on demand by now. I don't know if it's going to be on any streaming services because it's United Artists. So that
folds under the Amazon umbrella, right? So.
That's right, because of MGM. So yeah, it might be on Amazon. Now that you mention it. So
if not now, in the future.
Yeah. All right.
Nothing's ever Dolly. It was Sully.
Speaking of awards and prestige and the glitz and the glam, Sundance 2023 has come and gone. It just ended on Sunday. And, we've been covering Sundance on this show every year since 2018. And although the first time was we brought somebody in who went to Sundance and we didn't, cover it that year, but I've been covering since 2019. This was my 5th year. And obviously Sundance, I mean, it's my favorite film festival just in general. I just love the vibe of it. I love the discovery of all the movies. But the last 2 years, I've been doing the online version. The last 3 years I've been doing the online version, but the last 2 years, it's a little bit more limited. Like we're not able to see everything. And I think I was capped at a certain point. I couldn't just watch whatever I wanted unless I had to be strategic of well, this is probably going to get an award, right? So then I probably shouldn't get this because I think our press passes were limited to around 20 movies or something like that. That said, I was able to see most stuff that I wanted to. There's still a few things hanging out there that I'm looking forward to getting to eventually. Unfortunately, they were really, really I think finicky with who they accredited for press this year. So for reasons I don't understand, Will, even though you've been covering the festival for several years now, you were not given a press pass this year.
Yeah.
Along with a lot of other notable critics. You're not alone. It wasn't just an anti-Ashton campaign. There were a few people where I'm just how come you cover the festival? But they were, they were a little bit more exclusive, which is a weird, I don't even like that word.
Well, I will say it's partly my fault, and partly your fault, maybe. Okay,
my fault. Wait, because you did it a little late.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna joke because initially, at one point we were talking about going there in person, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I'll check back with that later, see if that's worth doing. And I remember, I think in October, November, I was kind of hey, do you still want to do that? I was oh, I don't think I can do that. It's too busy. I've been traveling too much. Okay, no problem. Totally fine.
Yeah, I guess the days off. That's what it was.
So I kind of took that as not only were you not planning to cover the festival in person, you were also not planning to do it online.
Which does not make sense to me. It's like, why wouldn't I cover it online?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you didn't take off, I figured you're just not going to have the time to
just watch it in the mornings, the evenings, because that's how I would do it. I have a commute. So like I would watch one movie on my way to work because my commute's long. And then so I'd usually be able to watch almost the entire thing. And then I watch a little bit if I have anything left over my lunch break. And then on my way home, and then I watch one more movie in the evening. It's kind of like being at the festival in person. Like you can fit in like 3, maybe 4 movies a day. And that's being, and you're getting a good chunk of the coverage.
In any case, classic miscommunication.
Which I don't know. It's like, why wouldn't you cover it then? I don't know. I just assumed you would because.
In any case, I applied late. It was like the last day I was trying to get in. As you mentioned, they were pretty exclusive on who got to cover the festival, and so I did not.
But I know some people who like they applied like well in advance, and they're well-known critics. They do good work, and they were shut out too. It seems like it was a little bit of like a luck of the draw kind of thing to me. But regardless, I do think that like next year, I really want to make a point to cover. The only thing is that I know already that I'm going to be out of the country early January. So I probably can't. I just remembered that. So
wow.
Literally as I say it, I won't be. I won't be able to do it in person next year either, huh? I'm going to be in Thailand around that time. So yeah,
news to me. Well, have fun with that. In any case, I was going to say this is kind of, I guess, revenge or karma or whatever you want to call it for me being accepted into virtual TIFF in 2020. When you and Abby were not. So I guess that's kind of how the fates had turned, because I got the opportunity. Fate decided I can't do Sundance this year. So it didn't work out for me, unfortunately, but it sounded like it was a good festival.
It was a good festival. It was definitely an improvement from last year. I remember last year, like there weren't as many standouts. Like there were movies I enjoyed, like Duel, Cha Cha Real Smooth. Couple of documentaries that I thought were good, like Aftershock and Descendant, and Navalny was good, but there weren't a lot of movies that I just like was like, wow, like this. I wish I had seen this in the theater at Sundance. Like really great experiences, both on the dramatic front and also on the documentary front. There are 2 movies that stick out to me in particular. There are a few actually, but the 2 big ones are Beyond Utopia and Magazine Dreams. And so Beyond Utopia is it's like a Madeline Gavin's documentary about people who defect from North Korea to South Korea and what they have to go through. And the movie makes it clear from the very beginning that they're not using recreations. They're using exclusively archival footage that these people are risking their lives in order to get. So you're seeing like actual hidden footage in North Korea, the interviews and everything. It's all authentic. Then people who are running for their lives through China, because if they get caught by the Chinese government, they get sent back straight to North Korea. It is a jaw-dropping, genuinely like my mouth was agape throughout so much of it, kind of documentary. It's one of those things where I think only a documentary could do this. Like you could not communicate the intensity and the desperation of what is going on with people trying to escape, and the humanity of the people who help them, and the inhumanity of the people who only help them for money, which is this whole wrinkle of Beyond Utopia that I wasn't even expecting. I thought there were more people who did this out of empathy, but no, like there's a cottage industry of people in China and Vietnam and these places who, if they have a reason to sell you out because you're too much of a problem, then they will, because they'll make money. And there's this very delicate structure of power and influence between these people and the people in South Korea who are like, well, if you decide to send these people over to North Korea, we're not going to have a deal anymore. And it's very, very tentative. And there's always this air of like at any moment, everything could go wrong. And because it's all archival footage, that sense of realism comes through so painstakingly. I found this to be like truly a standout documentary. One of those documentaries that I think everybody should see. One of those docs that I think everybody has a reason to sort of pay attention to a lot of the underlying themes, how brainwashing works. The interviews that they do on the people who do get out of the country, and even the people who are like en route and they still are like, honestly, like the brainwashing, the programming that they have of like their impression of North Korea and the leaders there and what the rest of the world is like that's not an easy thing to disentangle. So it's a very instructive documentary in that sense too. But be warned, because it's a very stressful documentary. It's hard to watch in a lot of places, but I couldn't look away. Like I couldn't, turn it off. I was like, I have to see this all the way through. And I'm very glad I did. It's heartbreaking. It's also uplifting. It's everything that I think a good documentary is. And I hope when you eventually see it, Will, that we can have a nice long discussion about it, because I could definitely see you having some thoughts on especially the filmmaking styles employed here, because there are some really interesting choices in terms of like how much they show of one thing versus how long certain sequences are, and how all that is communicating in order to achieve that like maximum empathy between the viewer and the subject of the documentary. It's fascinating stuff. But
yeah, I'm really excited to see this one.
It won an award.
Amazing things. Yeah. It, like you said, won the award for best documentary. I almost had a chance to see this film. Funny enough, Corey Woodger, friend of the show, accidentally bought 2 copies of the film when they were, I guess, on the award sale. And I thought the link would last longer than it did. He said it would go through Monday. And I was like, oh, okay. Then, because my Sunday was a little busy. So it's like, okay, I'll just watch it Monday morning and, catch up on one of the best films of the festival. And the link was like instantly like denied. So I was like, oh, bummer. Oh, well, I just felt bad. No, I mean, just, again, classic miscommunication on my part. I should have read up on how long the link would last. So... in any case, I did not get a chance to see the film, unfortunately, but I'm really excited to see it. It doesn't look like it's been acquired yet, as far as I can see.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I haven't. This is one of those years where I really didn't pay, because again, I was working. I didn't have as much time to sort of really look into all the movies too, and I wasn't able to write a ton of reviews or anything. But yeah, I didn't see a lot of the acquisition coverage, so I'm behind on that. But if it's taken on documentaries, I mean, the other 2 docs that I saw, actually there were 3 docs that I saw. The Disappearance of Cher Haidt from Nicole Newnham. That was a really good documentary. That was about Cher Haidt, who wrote The High Report, which is this famous female sexuality book that she wrote in the 1970s, kind of going through her life and about like the backlash that she received for saying things in the 70s and the 80s and going into the 90s that today are kind of like, well, I shouldn't even say common knowledge. So to be more specific, she was one of the pioneers in making mainstream the idea that like women don't, and then a little bit of a content warning, if you have little ears. So for women to achieve like climaxing, orgasm, and all of that, it used to be just like everybody. It was like a little hidden secret that like, intercourse doesn't get most women there. Like the traditional, like missionary and all of that, stimulation, oral stimulation, things like that are far more effective. But it was something, and also certain self-pleasure methods and all of that. This was something though that was kind of like hushed about. It was something that people weren't very open about, especially like in the 1960s, 50s, and before all that. But Cher Haidt was revolutionary in terms of bringing in anonymous people, talking about their experiences, talking about, how that norm, that sort of traditional thing was just, not their experience. And it was also about infidelity. It was about how women seek pleasure. And that was something that turned Cher Haidt into really a sensation and a very profitable seller of books. And it's a good documentary because it really goes through it. And it goes through like the arguments and the bad faith and debates that people would have with her about this stuff, of like thinking that she was saying like men were useless and stuff like that. And it's an interesting movie about like feminism, second wave feminism, third wave feminism, whatever feminism you want, and how it sort of has like changed over the decades and how it's been diminished in a lot of ways and be repurposed in some ways, but it doesn't go all the way with it. That sort of subject line. It does focus mostly on Sher Height, which I think is the right call. So this is a good one too. I also saw Still, a Michael J. Fox movie, the documentary from Davis Guggenheim, and that was really great. Just kind of going through Michael J. Fox's life, and it's straightforward in terms of what it is. It's the story of like how he became a celebrity, and then of course his Parkinson's diagnosis, and the period of his career in the 90s has always been the most elusive to me, because he came out with a ton of movies and then Spin City and everything, but it was kind of when he had Parkinson's but was kind of quiet about it. And I'm more familiar with like 80s Michael J. Fox and 2000s Michael J. Fox. And that was a period of his life, the 90s, that it was really fascinating to see more of and to kind of get a sense of who the guy is. And that was a really, really great covering of his life. And I think also I do appreciate that he's definitely I didn't read his book, but he's definitely pretty forthcoming about how much of a bad person he was, especially like how he treated people, specifically his wife in the 80s and 90s. And I appreciated the movie for that, where you do get the sense that there's some like real self-reflection going on. It's not just like a puff piece, and you do get the sense that he's like going through his baggage. He's going through like his demons in this in a way that's very open and honest, and that I appreciated. So that was a good one too. The other documentary I saw was The Little Richard, I Am Everything, from Lisa Cortez. And I mean, yeah, it's one of those music documentaries that I just think it does the job. You go through Little Richard's life, and it's a documentary with like one main job to do, which is that this guy did not get appreciated for his contribution to rock and roll. There's a reason he's considered the architect of rock and roll, despite people thinking that Elvis is the king of rock and roll. It was something that was brought up in the Elvis movie, that the Tutti Frutti thing, where that was Little Richard's song. I think he was played by I forget the actor who played him in Elvis, but he kind of gets like that offhand mention, and Elvis sort of plays it off like, the movie plays it off like Elvis was the one who really revolutionized the format. It's like, no, he was just like the top 40 version of like the real underground movement, and the documentary is really, really cool in the first section, because it goes through like all of Little Richard's influences, what his life was like before he had like the breakout fame, and how that crafted, like it was more, I think, informative and enlightening about how rock and roll was really a collision of like all of these different artists all sort of just bringing their styles together and just having a blast. And then of course, you see how Little Richard gets victimized by so many different things, specifically like his religious upbringing kind of co-opts him throughout different periods of his life. And I think that it was a very, very sharp documentary in those cases. It was stuff that I didn't know about Little Richard, but I was happy to suddenly learn about, because like I just thought he was always out of the closet and all this stuff, but there were certain things that happened with him in specifically the 70s that I was totally unaware of, and it was really cool to see a documentary bring light to that. So those are all the docs. I think you saw a doc as well, right?
Bam, boop. Yeah, so I saw two documentaries. Okay. I saw Plan C, and I saw Juno. I don't know which one you want to hear me discuss first.
Which one was better?
Certainly Juno. Though I thought both are pretty... I mean, Plan C, it's an interesting one. As the title, would suggest, it's a documentary that explores, the take the pill movement. Certainly, right. With
Sorry, I was going to mute and I accidentally pressed stop. Yeah, sorry, if you could start over that sentence.
Which one?
Just start the Plan C thing over again. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. Yeah, so I saw the documentary Plan C, which, as the title would suggest, explores the take the pill movement, and it's kind of related back to actually is related to the recent, stripping of rights that have been happening with the abortion movement, and obviously with Roe v. Wade being overturned, and the several women are, doing all they can to continue to provide safe and easy abortions for women in the United States, particularly related to little pills that they can take orally to dissolve the pregnancy early on. And it's one of those films that I've kind of had this thing with documentaries where it's so apparent that like there's a sense of danger with the storytelling here, in the sense that like several subjects don't want to speak on camera. They have to kind of find creative and unique ways to kind of work around that. Several subjects don't want to have their names exposed, don't even want to have their faces or voices seen or heard. And there's a real sense of like, oh, okay, like you feel the urgency, you feel the necessity of the story, and also the risks that are being involved for these people to come forward with this information and be public and tell women what they need to know about this, even if it risks their well-being and their livelihood, and maybe even their lives in the process. But the style of the filmmaking, and it's not like a poorly made film, it's fine as far as the execution, but the fact that it is so kind of straightforward and traditional, and it's storytelling and very polished, and kind of packaged in a very traditional way. I don't know if that's for the better or for the worse, in the sense that I feel like it doesn't quite honor the risk of the subjects. I feel like the movie itself could honor them more by making a film that's more audacious and a little bit more intense, and kind of feels that urgency a little bit more. But I also understand that if they want the story to be seen to as wide an audience as possible, if they want to make something that's a little bit more straightforward and traditional in its packaging, maybe that's a little bit more accessible, makes it a little bit more easier to get funding and to reach a wide audience, that would be for the better of the movement and the character and the subjects in the long run. So I don't know what ultimately is the best result there. That's kind of up to other people to decide. For me, I kind of wish it was a little bit more risk taking in its filmmaking. I just felt like it didn't quite reach its potential as far as the documentary filmmaking is concerned. But fine film, certainly worth watching. Important, timely story to be sure. But the movie that of the two that I saw that I certainly appreciated and liked more was the documentary Juno, which let me look up the filmmaker's name.
Junam is Sierra Urich.
Sierra Urich, yeah. Who is a Persian American filmmaker, and the film explores the three generations of Iranian women, particularly her mother, and her grandmother, and the sort of kind of boundaries and the barriers that come with language and culture due to the fact that obviously the filmmaker, because she grew up in America, doesn't quite have the natural sort of Persian. She just can't really speak to her grandmother, who speaks sort of broken English. She isn't able to speak Persian to her because of her upbringing, and her mother, while able to be a translator for the two, has this sort of need to kind of feel like held back and not really talk about a lot of the family secrets and a lot of the difficulties that the family experienced, particularly when they immigrated to America. And it's a really fascinating, personal, intimate, but ultimately moving documentary. Just flows in a very sort of cinematic verte style that allows the subjects to feel very lived in, feels very authentic. You see a lot of the camera setup and a lot of the little moments that you wouldn't normally see in a documentary, and they kind of compose the film to make it a little bit more homey and lived in. And it's just a really sweet, really impressive little documentary, and I definitely recommend it. I don't know when it's going to be released or how it's going to be released, but definitely think it's worth seeing. I was really impressed by it.
Awesome. Well, of the dramatic features, I really had three favorites. One over the others. Two of the favorites were Polite Society, which I think has been getting plenty of attention because it's such that's just like pure fun. I said in my Letterboxd review that it's like, what if a Tarantino fan made a Pakistani wedding movie in the style of Home Alone 3? And that's kind of what we're dealing with. It's just this really fun and charming movie that, speaking of YA teen novels, it kind of feels like a YA movie in some respects, because it's about this teenage girl who is obsessed with wanting to become a stunt woman. And she's not, she has a blue belt, she's not a black belt. She's not this hyper competent teenager. She has her limitations, but yeah, she is trying to essentially botch a wedding between her put upon older sister, and have her. She feels like her sister is like selling out or like abandoning her dreams of being an artist in order to be like with some rich dude. And so she's trying to sabotage the wedding, but like things go way, way, way more serious than I think she's expecting. The main actor here, Priya Kansara, is like just dynamite. Just absolute, like, I think that she is a star in the making. I hope we get to see her in a lot more stuff. We've seen the other actor here, Ritu Arya, her sister, in a bunch of other stuff like Red Notice, and she was one of the like predominant characters in Umbrella Academy, and she's quite good in this as well. So I like Polite Society quite a bit. I think that you might enjoy it too. I don't know how much of it is like your thing necessarily, but it's certainly worth checking out.
And that's coming out fairly soon, right? That got acquired earlier,
yes,
like before the festival happened by Focus Features, and I think it's coming out in April, right? Because there's like already a trailer you can watch.
I thought it might have been even sooner, but I'm not 100% sure.
I thought it was,
yeah, it won't be long.
Yeah, I thought it was April. I just know it's sometime in like early to mid spring. Sure. So yeah, if you want to see it, should be available pretty soon. Like me.
Yeah,
I want to see it.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a good time. Also, Theater Camp. Oh my gosh, Theater Camp. This movie's so funny. I genuinely think this is the funniest movie I've seen like Sundance since Palm Springs, which had me and then some.
The Molly Gordon one, right? She directed and starred it.
Molly Gordon co-directs with Nick Lieberman, who I think first film for both of them.
Yeah.
And Molly Gordon, you might recognize from movies like Shiva Baby, and of course, I almost said 8th grade, but not 8th grade.
Booksmart?
The Booksmart, yeah. She stars in it as well, along with Ben Platt, who the two of them work at this theater camp that is in disarray because the main person, the owner of the camp, is in a coma. And so the staff kind of has to band together to try to keep the camp alive, and so Molly Gordon and Ben Platt's characters are focused on like coming up with the perfect show, but they're at odds, of course. And the real revelation for me in this episode, like I wasn't sure about this guy, was Jimmy Tatro. Are you aware of this guy? He's been in a bunch of stuff over the years.
Maybe if I saw him, the name's not really ringing a bell.
He's been in movies like he was in 22 Jump Streets, King of Staten Island, Bad Education. I feel like if you saw a picture of him, you might recognize him. He was in The Wolf of Snow Hollow. He hasn't been in a lot of stuff that like is that good. But I think that not that Wolf of Snow Hollow isn't good, but I think that he's like an actor who kind of comes off as like he's very bro-y. He's very like, he likes Post Malone. He's that kind of guy. And he is the son of the theater owner. And he's kind of the biggest surprise for me in this. He has this whole thing with Patty Harrison, who's in the movie as well. She was in a Sundance movie a couple of years ago that was good, Together. And he kind of is like, I think like the secret heart of the movie. It's kind of surprising to me actually, like where this movie goes. But yeah, Theater Camp. I was telling Corey Woodruff because he was like, oh man, what happened in the end of Theater Camp? Like his link expired or something. Like he had like 15 minutes to go. And I told him, I was like, I can't tell you because like the last like 15, 20 minutes of the movie are the funniest. And I was like, you're just going to have to wait until, the movie comes out, and then Corey's going to have to rewatch it, I guess. But yeah, it's very funny. I don't know if it's your kind of comedy, Will, but it's done in a mockumentary format, which I'm an easy mark target for, but it doesn't do the talking head thing. It's more kind of like, okay, South Park. You remember that South Park episode years and years ago where it's like the special ed camp, where like Towley is in it, and it's done in the style of like those like documentaries where all of a sudden the screen goes black and like text comes on to like give you more context, but it's done comedically.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the main comparison I was hearing was Christopher Guest, like mainly Waiting for Guffman seems to be an easy sort of comparison for this film.
Yeah, I think that's what South Park is kind of Well, I don't think South Park's lifting from that, but like, that's like probably my favorite South Park episode. And so this movie is kind of like in that style of like lampooning that type of like documentary, mockumentary format. So that said,
right.
That kind of humor gets me pretty easily.
Sure. And I was looking it up. Jimmy Tatro. Yeah, I do mainly remember him from Bad Education.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Also, Alan Kim is in this. He has a fun little role. The kid from Minari. I was like,
Oh,
hey,
okay, cool.
I know you.
Another
also
Sundance kid.
Yeah, there's a lot of Sundance people in this. But then my favorite movie of the festival, and currently my favorite movie of the year so far, is Magazine Dreams, which is it's a divisive movie. It's not one of those movies where I think everyone's going to be on the same page as me.
I mean, the main thing I had heard was that the performance is great, but the film, it seems like people have mixed opinions on it.
They do, and I think that the film is also great, and I think that it's one of those movies that has really stuck with me. It's Jonathan Majors, I think, in probably almost certainly his best performance to date. This is going to be a big year for him because he's going to be like, he's coming up on the Marvel stuff this year for sure. Like he was already in Loki, but like one episode or something like that. And I think he's going to be like he's going to be the Thanos type villain moving forward. He's going to be in the Ant-Man movie and all that stuff, but whatever. Magazine Dreams, I think, is where he's shining. And then some. He plays this kind of like, he's an amateur bodybuilder, and he's a bit of like an incel. And the thing I love about this movie is like what it says about that, like what it says about the way that men direct their violence and the way that they direct their opinions of like what an influencer is, what fame is. I don't want to go into too much detail, but man, you watch this guy for over 2 hours. It's a 2-hour movie, and it's one of those movies where like at the 1 hour point, it was kind of like RRR, where I was like, this isn't the end. This feels like it's supposed to be the end. But what I really enjoy about the movie is that when you get to where most movies would end, this movie really starts to kick up, because it's more about the aftermath of something horrific than really just like building to a climax and then maybe like 5 minutes of resolution and the movie ends. This movie is like, it's a movie and then an hour-long epilogue. And I think that's throwing people off. I think it's making people be like, what? I don't want it to be that. For me, though, I did. I genuinely was more fascinated by the second half of this movie than the first. I think that if it had only been that first movie and they had padded it to 90 minutes, I think that it would be a lesser movie. I think it would be more traditional and formulaic, but it's not. And I think that that's why it sticks out for me. So it was my favorite movie of the festival. And I liked a lot of stuff this year. I liked, not to go into detail, but I liked Fancy Dance. I thought Fair Play was like good with caveats. I think some people really liked that, but I was kind of taken aback by certain things toward the end, and I was kind of like, I don't know.
Didn't you say you kind of hated it last week?
I did. And I think it's because of the last like the last 20 minutes. I think it's like moving to such a good boil, and then I think it botches what it's trying to do a little bit. The movies I hated were Cat Person and Bad Behavior, which we'll get to, and I think we'll cover Cat Person. We're going to have to, but I mean, Jesus Christ, like Cat Person, like I did not think that they could make a movie worse than the short story, personally. And I should say, like, I don't think the short story is bad. I think the short story is actually pretty interesting, and
sure,
some of the baggage around it is kind of fascinating too, around like the person who wrote it. And I think that it has a really good ending, and I think it has a good sort of like message, in terms of like the way men behave. But I always found the short story to also be a little bit like, a little bit underbaked in some respects, but it's a short story I respect. But I was like, okay, if you're going to make a movie, you have an opportunity to make the short story better. But no, it just kind of like does not, I think, understand what the short story was after.
Sure.
In a lot of respects. It's pretty bad. Like I genuinely am like baffled by how much that was botched.
Why
I did really, yeah.
Why do we have to cover it?
Well, I think it's going to be a buzzy kind of movie. You don't have to watch it if you don't want to.
I'll watch it. I just thought it was funny. You were like, "Oh, we got to cover this." I'm like,
"Well, I feel like it's worth discussing." Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Because I think there's something fascinating to be said about the way it was adapted, and I want to go into more detail when it's more available.
Fair enough. Yeah.
A movie that I did really like. A couple of movies I really liked. I really liked Heroic. This is the one about a Mexican soldier who kind of comes up through the ranks. That's a really harrowing movie, but worth checking out if you have the stomach for it. And Birth Rebirth was kind of cool. Judy Reyes and what's her name? I forget the actress. She was in also an Umbrella Academy. Marin Ireland. I almost forgot. That's kind of like a goofy, like horror-esque kind of movie. I thought that was kind of fun. It wasn't amazing, but it was kind of cool. Fancy Dance, which was really touching. This one was about indigenous women, and it's kind of like a better version of Wind River, because it's sort of about like women on the reservation who just disappear and like nobody cares. And Wind River was more from the perspective of like the white people in the periphery of that. And this movie's actually like, what if we did a better job? And so it kind of came out pretty well. And then there were some movies that I thought were okay. Like I thought they were fine. Like again, Fair Play, which should have been better. It was kind of disappointing. Pod Generation, the Emilia Clarke kind of thing, where it's like, what if you could grow a baby in like a pod instead of be pregnant? And it was an interesting premise, but I don't think it was that, good. You Hurt My Feelings, the Cole Hall Center thing.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
It's okay. It's very ho-hum, but it's what you expect. Like, it's Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Tobias Menzies and Michaela Watkins. And it's a very A24 kind of like, love, like that kind of movie. It's very like easy breezy, casual slice of life,
Yeah. I mean, I was looking forward to it.
It's like, it's just about like, what partners lie to each other about. And it's very up, it's bubblegum.
It's therapy, right? It's about a therapist.
Yeah. Sure. But it's more about art. It's more about like when your spouse is bad at something, you don't want to tell them. Yeah. And it's like that one little idea, tiny little baby idea, like stretched out to a movie is kind of awkward, but okay.
No, I think it sounds funny, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
The characters are fun. Yeah, it is funny because it's self-aware in that way, but Bad Behavior was genuinely bad. Worse than Cat Person. At least Cat Person was bad in an interesting way. Bad Behavior, I just want to forget I watched it. And poor Jennifer Connelly, who I think, is just, this is, and I think you were looking forward to, right? Because it's Alice Englert, who's an actress, but famous mother, Jane Campion.
Sure.
And, I know I was kind of interested. I was like, oh, yeah, she's directing a movie now, and she stars in it too. I don't even know what to say. I was just like, I think, like I said at one point, it's like, look, if you have some stuff to work out with your mom, just a phone call, it will suffice, not a movie.
I mean, the main thing I remember you saying is that I'm halfway through this movie and I still genuinely don't know what it's about. And I was like, okay, that's a good sign.
Like, that's the thing. It's like, I don't get what she's trying to say about her mom in a way that like makes sense, that is cohesive. And it's like, she's saying like everything and nothing. It's that kind of thing. Similarly,
a first film.
This is more of a hot take. I couldn't get into the Persian version, which like I should have. I mean, the movie, it moves.
Fun title.
It's like, it's really fun. I really like the lead performance. I love this family. I should love the Persian version. I think that it's so fun. I think it's so interesting, but it's just not executed well. There's way too much narration. There's way too much of like, I just feel like the movie stops and starts and like the structure is all off. And there's this whole thing with the movie of like, it keeps introducing all these wrinkles and all these characters. It feels like a series trying to fit itself into a movie. It's that kind of thing. And it's disappointing because as soon as I start to like what's going on and I'm like, oh man, I want to kind of see where this character goes, it jumps back in time. And now we're back in time and we're doing this. And I'm like, well hold on. What about that? And yeah, it's frustrating. But it's frustrating in like an annoying way because I wish I had loved it. And then I think the last one, and I should have mentioned just about everything here, is Sorcery, which was okay. That was fine.
What is this, Sorcery?
This is kind of like this. There was a couple of movies that reminded me of. It reminded me of like You Won't Be Alone a little bit, and it's another movie that kind of like focusing on like indigenous people. I think in this case in Chile, who are, they're these German settlers, and she kind of turns to this like cult of like sorcerers in order to like not enact revenge, but sort of define this sort of like soft, quiet justice. And it's a very like slow movie, like lots of like meditation, lots of like scenery and stuff like that. And it didn't really grab me too much, but I certainly, found it to be, fun to watch in certain scenes, but then other scenes I was like, I'm ready for the next part. Cool exploration of like where it is, but it's just, it's a little bit slow, a little bit doesn't have much energy to it. And that's Sundance 2023, at least by me. I mean, there are a lot of other things,
I was going to say
stuff Ray Lane, I think, was like the big thing that
Yeah, I heard
didn't get
that's
to
great.
see, but I heard that was fantastic. Eileen, which I really wanted to see.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that one too. 1001, I heard, won the fest,
Yeah.
or the dramatic award.
One of the best of the fest, according to many. And I also, I really wanted to see Mami Wata.
Okay.
Yeah. But, we should be able to get to some of this stuff in later episodes, including there is one more movie called Infinity Pool.
Sure. Well, I was going to say also A Little Prayer I heard was really good. Passages I heard was good.
Starling Girl
Flora
was good.
and Son. I'm surprised you didn't see that one.
Yeah. I had it on my list, and I just I had to draw the line somewhere. And then also I heard Sometimes I Think About Dying, the big Daisy Ridley return from Star Wars was not good.
Yeah, I heard it wasn't great, and I was curious about that one. My Animal I heard was pretty good.
So I'm looking at the acquisitions here. My Animal was acquired by Paramount, and it looks like Amazon got In My Mother's Skin, Netflix got The Deepest Breath, Searchlight got Theater Camp. I didn't know about that one. A bunch of other stuff. Mubi got another thing called Passages, so they're still doing their thing. Little Prayer was picked up by Sony Pictures Classics. Talk to Me was picked up by A24. The Eternal Memory, which was definitely like I was hearing some interesting buzz about, was picked up by MTV Documentary Films. That's interesting. A few others. Netflix got Run Rabbit Run.
I heard that wasn't
get to that
good.
One. Yeah, I didn't hear anything about it at all. I don't know if it's good or bad, but
I heard it was.
Other than the last one, Oscilloscope got Joyland. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. That I thought that came out last year.
Maybe it did.
Okay. It was on the short list for international feature. I remember.
So it's probably just getting, it's like a North American kind of thing,
right?
And then Little Richard, that was one more. Sorry, Little Richard got picked up by Magnolia, which I think it was already, and CNN Films, which I think it already was by the time the Sundance. It was like a pre-acquisition because like you could see the CNN thing. But all right, let's talk about. Oh, sorry, Fair Play got picked up by Netflix.
That was wasn't that Theater? That's
perfect.
Camp,
perfect for Netflix.
Yeah. That Theater Camp were like the biggest acquisitions, right? Fair Play was like
Theater
20
Camp
million.
is like a Palm Springs, I think, where they're probably going to release it in the summer, and do it that way. And then Fair Play, I think they're really gonna try to make it a big Netflix talking point because of the Bridgerton connection. It's what is her name? I always forget her name. The girl who plays Daphne in Bridgerton, Phoebe Dynevor, something like that. Yeah. And she's definitely an actress. Okay. Infinity Pool.
Ringing praise. Do you think Theater Camp's going to go to theaters, or do you think that's going to be a Hulu thing like Palm Springs?
I hope it goes to theaters. Okay. I could see it being good counter programming, the comedy of it, and I would be surprised if they just send it straight to Hulu in this environment. But no, anything's possible. I want to see it in the theater, but I want to see it with an audience.
Sure.
All right, Infinity Pool. Enough Sundance. Let's talk more about a Sundance movie because we both saw this one.
I did, yeah. I saw that.
I'm curious where we're going to land on this. This has been a divisive movie. So this is a sci-fi horror directed and written by Brandon Cronenberg. I believe Cronenberg's last movie was Possessor, right?
Yes.
He hasn't done anything in between? Yeah,
Nope.
Possessor was one of my favorite movies of 2020. Also a Sundance movie. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought that it was just so well written, and that movie just had me in its grip. This movie stars Alexander Skarsgård, Mia Goth, Cleopatra Coleman, and a few other familiar faces. And it's kind of like continuing the sort of like Rich People Island sort of trend, trope that's been going on with things like White Lotus, Triangle of Sadness, Glass Onion. There have been a lot of movies where like rich people go to islands and then havoc ensues, like that kind of thing. And this is more of that.
Just like real life. Hot take.
This happens in real life, this movie?
I guess so, yeah. I don't know.
Okay. Boy, I did not like this movie. I just found it to be a bit of a pain. Like, one of those movies where I think it has like one thing to say. It has like one theme that is like got some substance to it, and it just says it like 1,000 times in the same way, essentially. And like, look, the style is there, and I don't want to say too much about like what happens in this movie, at least at the beginning of this, but I just think this is a big miss. Like, I just think that it's one of those movies where I think it's first draft material. I think that it goes on and on. It's listless. I think the only thing it really has going for it is a couple of scenes that are kind of interesting to watch, but I don't care enough about the characters to care about the scenes. And I should care about Mia Goth in this because she's the most like electric performer in this. But at a certain point, I was tired of Mia Goth. This movie made me tired of Mia Goth, and that is astounding because that should not happen. Like that seems to me like cosmically impossible. But I'm wondering if we're going to disagree on this. Did you like this movie? Are we going to fight?
I thought it was fine. I don't know. I guess like the funny thing for me is that like I keep seeing all these sort of like extreme reactions from people, like you're saying, the fairly divisive response, and people being like, "It's so gross and perverted," or like, "Oh, it's so indulgent," and, so think so
My
highly
face
of
was
itself.
stone like watching this, like
Yeah, and I was just kind of like, "Yeah, it's fine." Some of it was a little gross. I thought it looked cool visually. I don't know. I think you're certainly a lot higher on Brandon Cronenberg than I am. I'm not negative on him. I like Possessor. I thought his first film, Antiviral, was like solid as a little debut. But I think the big thing for him, and I know this is kind of feeding into the whole nepotism baby conversation that's going on. I'm not really looking to dive into that, but I do think the fact that his films feel so indebted to his father is sort of unavoidable at this point. And to his credit, I will say, I feel like he is sort of forging his own style a little bit more here. Like, I think this.
Well, I thought that was the case with Possessor. I don't think that's the case with this.
I think. I mean, when you see the two films, or at least when you see Possessor and you see Infinity Pool, you can see that he's like very interested in like kind of pushing a lot of this kind of like fast editing, this kind of like flashy photography,
and
things
even the story of just like trying to like explore the idea of like being in a different body, being it like body horror kind of stuff, but more mental body horror than the more grotesque stuff that his father does.
Yeah, it's a lot of like intense close-ups of people getting their heads caved in. That seems to be something that he has a weird sort of fixation on. But yeah, I feel like his dad, his films are a lot more sort of, I don't want to say like analytical, but like a little bit more clinical, I guess. Like they seem a lot more interested in like why people have this perversion. There's sort of almost like a medical analysis sort of thing going on with him being like, indulging the perversion and exploring this like human need to like, seek out and explore the things in the body that we feel is sort of taboo about, and I feel like his films are a lot deeper, a lot more resonant, and obviously he's had a big head start compared to Brandon, and I think Brandon at the very least is kind of developing his own sense of visual prowess, and I think the concept here is really interesting, the idea of I don't know how much you want to give away, if how much you want to leave to surprise, but
I'll set up. I'll set up a little bit. It follows a novelist who is dealing with writer's block, played by Skarsgård, and his wife M, played by Cleopatra Coleman. They are at this resort in a fictional country called Latoka. It's filmed in Croatia, so it's supposed to be this kind of like Eastern European island. And there's like, it's this kind of place where you can go like have a vacation, but you can't venture out of the resort area because the rest of the country is like very dangerous. And that's the kind of setup. And then they run into some other tourists, one of them played by Mia Goth and her husband. And they are sort of like instantly like hit it off as like vacation friends, Will. We love Vacation Friends. Remember that movie?
Barely.
They were friends on vacation. Okay. And yeah, I mean, some like dark twisted stuff starts to happen when they leave the resort area in order to have a little bit of an adventure. And it's a sort of eat the rich kind of commentary at that point of like, how the rich get away with certain things that normal people do not. And it finds a clever way in order to, enact that when things go wrong.
Yeah. And I think there's a really fun premise there about like you said, privilege and identity and like class culture and the expectations and the idea of like if you can avoid all sense of justice and consequence, like what will you do and what do you feel emboldened to do? But the thing is that like I feel like the movie kind of plays out more or less as you would expect. Like, it doesn't really have that many shocking twists and turns outside of the premise. Like, I mean, I went in pretty cold, so like once you kind of get the idea of like, oh, this is what this is about. I had heard something about clones, so I knew like the idea of there was something about that going into it. So I wasn't like completely.
See, I didn't even know that. So I was like along for the ride. I knew nothing. I didn't know Skarsgård or Mia Goth were in it. So I was just like, what is this? All I knew was Cronenberg.
Brandon Cronenberg.
And I saw and I saw the masks thing, which was just sort of like the Pet Cemetery masks, kind of.
I don't know.
It's part of this like local festival that they're doing.
I don't know. For me, with the masks, it usually I'm fine with that. This is one of those times where I see the mask, I'm like, okay, you're just thinking like, hey, what would be cool to have in a movie as opposed to like what would make sense in this environment.
Like, I just watched one of the Purge movies.
Right, yeah.
So I'm going to kind of follow that track. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It didn't feel like authentic to me that like they would just be selling those at the store. I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking out loud.
You're going to get some women talking feedback there, Will, because someone's going to be like, well, look here.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, maybe.
I grew up in Latoka.
Yeah.
We do this every year.
In any case, I guess for me, the big issue I took with the film, and I'm curious where you stand on this. I did not have any issue with Mia Goth. I thought she was definitely the highlight of the film.
She's the highlight.
I thought her performance.
I was just exhausted because she has to carry the whole thing. It's like watching somebody carry a boulder up a hill. I'm just like, I want to help.
I mean, I guess my issue was more with the writing because I'm just kind of like waiting for that shoe to drop with her. Like the movie kind of treats it like a surprise. I'm just kind of just like, okay, get to this thing. And then I was kind of hoping
we know
the movie,
she's bad news.
Right.
Her last name is Goth.
Right. I was kind of just wishing they would reveal that earlier and then have like a super crazy third act. And the movie just it just kind of didn't do that. Like I felt like it was like building to the second act and then more or less just sort of ended as you would expect. But yeah, I don't know. I just like I found the character itself to be a bit plain and a bit expected, but her performance had a lot of that like gung-ho enthusiasm that I love from Mia Goth, and I think it's it's electric, it's fun, it's dynamite. I'm all about that. For me, I don't fault his commitment either. Like I think Alexander Skarsgård is really putting his heart into this. I think he's trying to play the role as best he can. I think he wants to be a little bit goofier. I think he wants to kind of play against expectations for him, and I admire that. I thought he was fairly severely miscast in this role. Do you agree or disagree?
I would have. I think I agree. I agree more with like the first 2/3. There is something though like interesting about like he gets into a different mode toward the end where he stops being the kind of all hell breaking loose kind of character, and he turns into like the desperate friend, like I got to get out of here kind of character. And I think that watching Skarsgård go through that transformation, there was something kind of visually interesting about that because he's such an imposing dude. This is the Northman we're talking about. This is the guy from Big Little Lies. Like,
right.
Seeing him on the back foot in this way was definitely like, it was interesting. And I think maybe I was just starved for something interesting at that point.
Well, that's what I mean is I admire the attempt on his part to kind of play against expectations. I would like to see a role where he's able to kind of do that more successfully. I just felt like I just never really bought like, why would he be this insecure? Like, why would he be like so like kind of sniveling and like pathetic? Like, I just kind of felt like even if someone like that were to be in this situation, like I just kind of felt like he would, still have like the charisma and like like the imposing physique to kind of I don't know. It just didn't seem as right to me as opposed to like I don't know. I think it's again more the writing, the fact that his character is written so plainly that there's not a lot of room for complexity with it. And that, we couldn't really get to know much about him other than, the sense that like he needs to be emasculated by the end of the film, which is fine. But I will say, I don't know if this is true, but I'd kind of heard rumblings at one point or maybe early on that Robert Pattinson was being considered for this part. And for me, like that just like totally opened it up. I was like, oh, that makes way more sense. Yeah,
because I think there's a choice to have it be an older guy because you want to get that sense that he's over the hill in some respects.
And I get it.
But I think Pattinson could have pulled that off too.
I just feel like...
Also, I thought Christopher Abbott, I was like, bring it back from Possessor.
Yeah, why not? I don't know. I feel like they just need someone who could like kind of sell the like,
the
suave,
conflict.
confident. Like,
because that's the thing, he needs to look he needs to look both guilty and fascinated, and like there were certain things where I was like, I feel like the script wants him to look excited by something that's horrific going on, but because of the way Skarsgård plays it, he just kind of looks bored or sort of confused.
I don't agree with that, but
I definitely there were points where I was just like, what am I supposed to get from this character right now? Because like I see what the script is going for, I don't see what the actor is bringing to it.
I just feel like Pattinson, like we saw him in Damsel, we see him obviously in Good Time, and I just feel like if you kind of were able to combine like that sense of like that drive, that thirst for like for the danger and the risk, but also kind of like that sniveling, sad kind of emasculated man that he's pathetic man that he kind of needs to be at the end of this film. Like I think Pattinson, at least this point, is able to kind of convey those shades of gray a lot better than I guess Skarsgård. It just felt a lot more like stark. Like it was like, okay, he's this, and then he's this. Like it wasn't as much room for complexity. And that's not me speaking ill of him as an actor. I mean, I thought he was, really good in Northman, and I've, really enjoyed his work in Big Little Lies. Like I think he's a capable actor. I just didn't feel like this was the right fit for him.
Yeah. Yeah, ultimately, I just couldn't get into it. I'm pretty negative on the movie overall, but I kind of get it. I kind of get what people are sort of finding interesting about it. I think that, sure, I mean, the actual thematic storytelling is interesting. I just think that other media is doing it a little bit better that I've seen. I haven't even seen White Lotus. I did see Black Lotus. That was good.
Sure.
Yes, and that's good.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would say of the recent rich satires, I'd kind of put near the bottom, like probably just below The Menu. He didn't really do much for me, unfortunately. I think Brandon Cronenberg has a decent sense of, like you said, visuals and tone, and I think he has the ideas. I just don't think he's able to kind of pull them off as successfully as his father at this point. And initially, when, his father wasn't making films as regularly, like when he was on kind of a hiatus after Maps to the Stars, I was a little bit more willing to indulge that, I think. But coming off of Crimes of the Futures, I just feel like I'm kind of like, okay, you kind of need to step up a little bit more, man. You got to kind of, do a little bit more to impress me. I just felt like this is a lot more kind of flash in the pan compared to the heaviness and the melancholy and the thoughtfulness that was in Crimes of the Future. And I don't know. I just feel like it's not really fair to compare him to his father. I mean, but also, I mean, if you're gonna make films that clearly evoke him, you kind of have to do the heavy lifting. He got there a little bit with Possessor. I mean, I know I'm not as high on it as you are, but I'm willing to, say that he was getting there with Possessor. This seems like a little bit of a stumble, but I'll see what he does next. I'm curious.
Sure. I will too. It's funny because it's like, what if he made like a musical? It's just like, I'm not my father, and then he makes like a musical that's even more deranged. But all right, let's play the Rotten Tomatoes game.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing though, right? Is like this whole movie is about like playing against expectations and like people expecting things from you and like not knowing really what to say. And it's like, yeah, I mean, there could have been something really interesting from this being from Brandon Cronenberg, but yeah, I don't know, just didn't play out. But anyway, Rotten Tomatoes game.
It does not seem like he's putting himself into the movie in that respect, I think. But all right. Infinity Pool on Rotten Tomatoes. We have 124 reviews counted. Will, what is your guess for the Rotten Tomato score?
I'm going to assume it's pretty high. I think most people are, willing to indulge the film. I'm going to say 78%.
Ooh, you're off by 10. Do you think that it is 68 or 88?
You know what? I'm going to say 68.
Should have gone with your instincts. It was 88. Okay. It is 88.
Yeah, so people are indulging the film a bit more than this.
They are. And I'm a little surprised. I'm like, really? This movie? But hey, it's the Sundance crowd too. And I think that, who knows? Maybe something's in the air. I just generally, I don't get it. Okay.
Forgot to mention, you saw a different version of the film than I did.
Oh, how different is it supposed to be?
Well, you got to see the like NC-17 cut, and I saw the R-rated version.
Oh, interesting.
So
I think there were some things in there where I was like, wow, that's really pushing the limit. Huh?
I mean, the only thing I'd heard was different was the peen. We didn't get to see any penis. But
you see plenty of that.
Okay, so yeah, I guess that's a big difference in the two versions that we saw.
Yeah, that changes everything. Nah.
Big, of course, being a intentional pun.
I mean, you see a lot of that in Heroic too. Okay. Audience score. What do you think? We have 100 plus verified ratings.
I'm a little off my game now. I feel thrown off. I'm going to say 82%.
100. No, I'm just kidding. 52%.
Oh wow. Okay, so way more divided.
Yeah. Audiences are taking one look at this movie and saying like to infinity and not beyond. Like that's it. Just stop. Okay.
Nice try.
What about? I think you said you got spoiled on the cinema score.
I did, yes,
but I didn't.
Okay, yeah. So let me pull it up.
Yeah, but you already know what it is, right?
I mean, I was told it. I was just double checking, make sure I got it right.
I see. So I'm gonna guess, and so I'm gonna think about it. I don't think it's an F. I think that some people are gonna watch it and get what they want out of it. So I think that it's gonna be like low, but not the lowest. I think it's either like a D plus or a C minus. Based on the audience score, I kind of want to go D plus, but I think a lot of critics probably saw it too with that, and I think I'm going to kind of split the difference and say C minus.
You are exactly correct.
Oh hell yeah! All right, okay. Will's not the only game in town. I can do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like C minus is like a bigger kiss of death than an F, because like F is like
it's not as interestingly bad.
Yeah. So if it's an F, it's like, oh, like what's this about?
Gotta go see it.
Yeah, like it's like Mother or something. You know, a movie I love, but like Mother gets an F, it's like, oh, like what's this about?
Here we go.
Or if it gets a B plus or B or higher, I guess it's like, oh, okay, what's going on here? But yeah, C minus is just like, don't worry about it.
Yeah. All right, and then Letterboxd will finish out 0 to 5. What do you think the Letterboxd score is? We have 31,000 watches, higher than I thought.
I'm going to say 3.5.
Very, very close. 3.4. Just a little bit lower. It could be 3.5 tomorrow, based on how close it is. But I feel like this might have been like a bit of a missed opportunity for Cronenberg based on, not all the reviews being as positive. And I don't think it's going to be that buzzy of a movie. And like, clearly like people were paying attention. They wanted to see this. And I kind of wish it was better for his sake because, hey, maybe that's just me. Maybe it is for most people and I'm just out of the loop or something. I don't know. But all right.
Out of the pool, as I guess, as it were.
Yeah, I'm in the shallow end.
Yeah.
I mean, my reviews are shallow. All right. That'll do it for this week's show. Long episode, but definitely true to what we used to do. We'll be back next week for season 7 of Cinemaholics. And I think, what are we talking about this coming week? Knock at the Cabin?
I believe that's right, yeah. Because you're not seeing 80 for Brady tonight, right?
I'm not. I'm seeing Knock at the Cabin tonight.
Oh, okay.
And so
man.
I hope it's good. I was just talking to my brother-in-law last night about Shyamalan because he was like, yeah, I haven't really seen any of his movies since like, The Happening. He kind of was like, never, forget Shyamalan back then. And I was like, you know what? I don't blame you. Like you were right to do that for a while after Happening, considering, but we'll talk about that. And who knows? We'll finally talk about a Shyamalan film after we missed Old a couple years ago. So
yeah, I know. Yes, we never. We talked about Glass on the show. So,
yes, and Split.
No, Split was the before our time, I believe.
Was it 2016? Yeah, you're right. But all right. We'll see you on the next one from the Internet California. I'm John Negroni.
And for Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Washington.
See you next time.